Long before the pyramids pierced the sky, long before pharaohs wore crowns of gold and lapis lazuli, a different story was being written in the fertile mud of the Nile Valley. This is the tale of Egypt's forgotten dawn, a time of struggle, innovation, and the quiet birth of a civilization. Join us as we journey back more than 5,000 years to the pre-dynastic period and uncover the lives of the people who laid the very foundations of ancient Egypt. Before 3200 BC, the Nile wasn't the backdrop for grand temples, but the lifeblood for small, scattered farming communities. Imagine a world shaped by the river's rhythm, the annual flood bringing rich, black silt, a promise of life, but also the constant threat of drought and famine. This was the world of Egypt's earliest settled peoples. They weren't building pyramids, they were building a future, one handful of grain at a time. They were hunters turned farmers, nomads who chose to put down roots in the Black Land, or Kemet. It was a gamble, a trade of the known risks of the wild for the uncertain promises of the soil. One of the earliest cultures we can name is the Badarian, flourishing around 4400 BC in Upper Egypt. What do we know about them? Our clues come from the earth itself. Archaeologists have unearthed their burial sites, and what they found is fascinating. The Badarian people were buried with great care, laid to rest with personal items like combs carved from ivory and simple, elegant pottery. Their most distinctive creation was a thin-walled, black-topped redware. Imagine the skill it took, using primitive kilns, to create that signature look by carefully controlling the firing process. These pots weren't just containers for food and water, they were expressions of identity, of artistry, and perhaps, of belief. The items they placed in their graves suggest they believed in an afterlife. A journey that required provisions. They were already thinking about eternity, long before the first stone of the first pyramid was ever laid. Following the Badarians, new cultural waves emerged, expanding and evolving. We call these the Naqada cultures, named after the large archaeological site where their remains were first extensively studied. The Naqada period is so significant that we divide it into three phases, Naqada 1, 2, and 3, which leads us right into the unification of Egypt. During Naqada I, also known as the Amratian period, we see communities growing. Their pottery styles changed, featuring geometric patterns and depictions of animals and people. They were not just surviving, they were creating a symbolic world. This was a time of dynamic change and increasing complexity. Villages grew into towns, and you start to see a clear social hierarchy developing. How do we know? Again, we look to the graves. Some tombs from this period are much larger and richer than others. They contain more elaborate grave goods, including beautifully crafted stone vessels, cosmetic palettes shaped like animals, and weapons made of copper. This suggests that some individuals or families had accumulated more wealth and power than their neighbors. Society was stratifying. Leaders, chieftains, or proto-kings were emerging, controlling resources and maybe even commanding labor. The simple farming life was giving way to a more complex, organized, and unequal social structure. This period also saw an explosion in trade, with Egyptian goods reaching as far as Mesopotamia and foreign ideas flowing back in. This wasn't just a peaceful evolution. The rise of powerful centers of influence inevitably led to conflict. Cosmetic palettes from this era, which were used for grinding makeup, became elaborate ceremonial objects, often decorated with scenes of warfare and conquest. They depict battles, bound captives, and triumphant rulers. This was a turbulent time. These small, competing proto-kingdoms, or chiefdoms, were vying for control over land, trade routes, and resources. The pressure was building, pushing these disparate communities along the Nile towards a final, monumental clash. The stakes were getting higher. Who would control the life-giving river? Who would unite the lands of the south and the north? The dream of a single, unified Egypt was being forged in the fires of ambition and conflict. By around 3200 BC, at the end of the Naqada II period and the start of Naqada III, we stand on the cusp of history. The cultures of pre-dynastic Egypt had developed the social, technological, and ideological tools necessary for statehood. They had established agriculture, mastered crafts, created extensive trade networks, and developed a complex society with powerful leaders. They had a shared set of beliefs and symbols, recognized up and down the Nile. Everything was in place for the next, dramatic step, the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt into a single kingdom, the world's first nation-state, under the rule of a single king, a pharaoh. The figures we know from legend, like the Scorpion King and Narmer, belong to this pivotal moment. The very dawn of recorded history. So, when you think of ancient Egypt, don't just picture the pyramids and the golden masks of Tutankhamun. Remember the long journey that came before. Remember the Badarian potters, carefully crafting their black-topped wares. Remember the Naqada traders, paddling their reed boats along the Nile, connecting a dozen different worlds. And remember the unnamed leaders and warriors who fought for power, whose struggles and ambitions ultimately gave birth to a civilization that would last for 3,000 years. These pre-dynastic peoples were the true pioneers. They are the deep, ancient roots of the majestic tree that would become pharaonic Egypt. Thanks for joining us on this journey back to the dawn of Egypt. If you found this glimpse into the past fascinating, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more stories from history's forgotten chapters.